Welcome, boys and girls. Costin here with a discussion about Lords of the End Times and the heroes we need in that specific DLC pack, expansion pack that we are all eagerly waiting for. And one of those heroes is Thorek Ironbrow. Believe it or not, he's actually one of the most relevant actor in the whole End Times debacle. I mean, we could talk about Tyrion failing to save his daughter. We could talk about Thorgrim, who had a massive army that could have changed things. We could talk about Belegar, who, if he had not acted foolishly. Basically, a lot of the end time events happened because the dwarves did not get their stuff together. And hilariously enough, it was actually Thorek, if I just switch this battle out to very easy so I can auto-resolve it and I'll just have my army. But it was actually Thorek that played a very pivotal role in the events of the end times. Now, again, dwarves being dwarves is a very constant affair in Warhammer lore. But they were the ones, the only ones really, who could have stopped a lot of the things that ended up occurring there. Because you see, if Thorgrim were to have instead moved to try and help Belegar, who lost the Battle of Caracade Peaks, things could have turned out differently, obviously. If Thorek had stopped Neferata from claiming Valea's power and brought her back, then Valea, with all that power she had accumulated while slumbering, would have been in a position where she could have made the difference and maybe prevented the end of the world. Because if we look at Nagash's return, yes, we have Arkhan, we have Manfred, and really that's probably very appropriate for Thorek starting next to Manfred, because someone should slap that guy around. If not Thorek, then who else would slap that guy around? I mean, you look at Manfred, it's like he's a dipshit. It's like just blow him up, really. Stop him from gaining the books of Nagash, stop him from bringing Nagash back. If Thorek, I'm not sure which area he was in, but I do know this. He ended up fighting against Neferata, and he ended up in a situation with the forces of Karakazul, which he can confederate in Warhammer 3. He ended up in a situation where things might have unfolded differently. Because by not being able to stop Neferata, what in short would happen is not only did Nagash get brought back, but he was also brought back in a very different state of affairs than what he should have been. Because he was brought back, he had Valea's power, so he was ultra powerful, and from that a lot of different things unfolded. You had Belegar falling at Caracade Peaks, because, again, without Valea. You had the Skaven running rampant over the dwarves, because without Valea, you end up having a situation where, without that kind of power in the hands of dwarves, then you just simply don't have the force needed to stop Belegar's fall. And gold greed, I guess, if you could talk about that. Or Belegar's obsession with Caracade Peaks above all else when the whole world was falling into ruin. Maybe Skarsnik could have won the Battle of Caracade Peaks against the Skaven. He almost did, worth pointing out. So it's all really related to the dwarves. And yes, the dwarves are to blame for everything. They should have helped more when they could have. Belegar should have stopped being foolish. Grombrindal in Warhammer 3 terms should not be on the other side of the freaking world doing, well, God knows what he's doing right there. And all those kind of things. It does matter. Those kind of things do matter a great deal. And that is really the great failure of the dwarves. Because while one can blame a lot of different races and a lot of different points where things could have and should have ended up going different, it really ties down to the decisions that dwarves made. Belegar, Thorgrim, and Thorek. Well, Thorek tried, for what it is worth. God knows where Grombrindal was in the end times, because apparently the writers forgot he even existed, so in Immortal Empires they put him next to Malekith. That's brilliant S tier. Gotrek and Felix were off doing their own adventure stuff. So, again, when we talk about a vital point in the end times lore, we gotta consider the ones, not the most powerful factions, not the ones with the most obvious powers, but the ones who could have been the pivot point and could have shifted things around, and that was definitely dwarves. Could have stopped Nagash's return. If you stop Nagash's return, Tyrion's daughter death, then High Elves and Dark Elves end up fighting each other in a civil war that ends up destroying Ulthuan, and so on and so forth. Again, it really, really, really goes back to the dwarves. So the most vital race that Creative Assembly needs to do right, and the most important legendary lords that Creative Assembly needs to do right in terms of handling the context of the end times, lords of the end times, are the dwarves. I mean, dwarves are a very good race between research, technology, units, etc. But what they lack is campaign mechanics. Belegar doesn't work very well. Thorek's campaign is a disaster, if you will. So, like, Thorek should be trying to really get Valea and get that power to dwarves. And if you confederate them, you can do it through that. You unlock that mechanic. When we talk about Belegar, he should have a choice. Do I really care about holding Caracade Peaks? And he should probably start with it in the end times or very close to it, but does he really care about it at the cost of everything else? With all the benefits that it has. But the upkeep situation creates a context in the game where you really do care about it. I mean, Belegar's entire campaign situation as is built on that dynamic, but it's kind of shitty. It's like, oh, I can pay plus 50% upkeep for units, or I can burn the Wood Elves. But burning the Wood Elves is smarter. But burning Lorem and end times is a disaster. So again, decisions, plot points, specific mechanisms that should be implemented in game in order to allow for those kind of better decision making for the dwarves. If you are a dwarf player, I mean, some people would just choose to be like, we don't care about it, we're freaking dwarves. But that's the thing. Without Thorek, without Belegar, without Thorgrim, the rest of the dwarves except Ungrim decided, yeah, we're gonna set this one out, and thus the world ends. Ungrim was the last one that really tried to do something meaningful, and that's why he fought at Averheim. That's why he brought a lot of dwarves with him at Averheim, but it was just not enough. I remember reading a plot point of Ungrim's perspective at Averheim about how things were unfolding in one of the rule books, I believe. And it was like, yeah, a lot of dwarves that are still fighting have chosen to be slayers, and the rest of them, the vast majority of them, had chosen to seal the holds and basically do nothing. Meanwhile, this gave on running rampant around the fucking world, blowing everything up, including Nagash's pyramid, and making a mess of everything and everyone. Now, sitting a fight out is not a solution. It never really is, and that's why I'm not particularly fond of the undercity mechanic that the dwarves have, or, you know, the holds mechanic, because dwarves should be an active race. That's kind of the point about them as a race. Because you see, dwarves have limited numbers, but they have vast power. And this entire mechanic of how dwarves should play, according to a dipshit developer, it's like, no, it's not how they should play, at least in terms of how it's currently implemented. Dwarves should be a race that chooses to be active, to chooses to engage, not spend 50 turns sitting on their ass doing nothing. That's what they should be, not the deeps. The deeps can be a nice side quest at most, but it's not implemented in such a way that's meaningful. It adds absolutely nothing given the current mechanics and context of the campaign. The fact that you're losing a building slot on the surface and using population surplus points and spending a significant amount of money makes the Deep's entire system completely fucking meaningless for where the game should be given the current pacing of the game, especially with the entire end times. I know I just dunked on the developer, apologies for that, but I gotta say it honestly. From what CA has revealed in interviews, it was basically one guy that basically decided to do the deeps. And look, I appreciate the system, but it's out of place given the rework that existed in Thrones of Decay. I'm not saying you shouldn't do the deeps. The entire system of the Underway should be implemented in a better system, but the deeps are not it. That's the problem when it's only one developer. That's really why I don't think it's just on one person. It's on the fact that only one person was allowed to do it. And, you know, when you only have one person doing it, or one person doing Tomb Kings and Lizardmen reworks, you end up with scuffy systems. And that's what Creative Assembly should avoid. Costin here, signing out. Stay tuned for more, and who knows, maybe the dwarves will be even more awesome in Lords of the End Times. It's all down to the dwarves. Yeah, but I hope Lords of the End Times are going to add a significant layer to them that doesn't exist right now. That kind of choice that you do have, because you do have balancing points. Like Thorek's all about exploring artifacts, but he should have a reason to stop Nagash's return. He doesn't right now. Belegar should have a reason to choose something else rather than Caracade Peaks or burn Lorem. Maybe he should have a choice. Okay, I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to accept that. I'm not going to get that. I withdraw. I go fight the Skaven. I've helped Thorgrim, and if Thorgrim falls, things are better, because suddenly the Dwarven army does have a very experienced leader. And the thing about Belegar in particular is that Belegar had a lot of damn good experienced soldiers under him. He just lost them all, and then he pissed off Maneater. Seriously, the one that was getting shit done the most in the end times trying to prevent the end of the world was freaking Grimgor. Now, that's saying something. Stay tuned.